Hey guys, my name is Nicholas. I have been in estimating for the past 5 years and a little bit before that whenever I was in the military. And I wanted to talk to you guys today about concrete estimating. So I'm going to be talking about two separate projects that I estimated. One is just going to be more of an overview for the larger project that I'm talking about, and the smaller project is where I'm going to go into demo as well as installation of concrete. So the first project is going to be for an airstrip, a runway for an Air Force base, and they wanted us to lay more pads, lay more lanes, and what that involved was using heavy bid to schedule the pad or the lane pours. And the reason why you would schedule them is because each individual lane has to cure before the next lane can be poured next to it. And so what you can do is you can skip lanes, basically leaving the same length or the same width of a pad next to it, and then go over a few feet and then pour the next one to where there's a missing lane in between each one, and you can come back and then start pouring in between those to where you can get a lot of the lane poured in one day. I had to account for rebar, which was a lot of the takeoff, doing the lines across to account for all the rebar, accounting for lightning poles that were in, and I think we excluded the lights that run along the runway. We had to account for all the men, material, discarding of materials off-site, being able to get concrete from a supplier that was close enough to site. I think they were CEMEX that we were working with to get the concrete there. Of course, all the equipment that was involved. I didn't necessarily have to go deep into this one to where we were worrying about ratios of the aggregate and it's like the sand aggregate and water mixture for the actual concrete itself. I didn't have to worry about that, just the volume of the entire project. So that one was definitely a doozy. I had just started with heavy bid during that period, and that was an interesting bid, but hopefully some of the overview that I gave you for that one can help you with taking into account things for your bids, because most of what estimating is just not missing something, and that's what this is for. So on the smaller side of the project, let's start with demo. So I had a pad that I needed to pour for an air handler unit, which is air conditioning, and they wanted to demo one of the pads where it was on and then build a new pad somewhere else. So on the demo side, it involved, normally you're going to be saw cutting through the concrete to break it up into chunks, and also possibly jackhammering through the concrete. You don't have to worry about much else past getting through the concrete block, and then of course cleanup afterwards and disposal with an on-site trash can, or maybe having it hauled off according to what you guys are doing there. The only other thing maybe I'd say would be regrading the gravel or that was up under the pad before you broke it up and saw cut it. And then as far as pouring the new pad, so we leveled out the aggregate we excavated the topsoil for the place where the pad was going to be at. Then we put aggregate down, leveled the aggregate off, and this is of course coming from the estimating side, but I also got to see some of this stuff in the field on the project management side of things. So you put up forms for the pad to be poured into, you pour that in, and for the volumetric measurements and calculations, you take into account this is a 4-inch pad, 4-inch deep in depth pad, 6-inch, 8-inch pad, and then You take that and times it by the width and the length of the pad, which would be the surface area of the pad, and you'll be able to get the volume basically. And turning that into actual bags of cement that you're going to have to pour into the concrete mixer and mix with water is the first thing I do, and that I've done mostly in the past, is just to go find a conversion chart for the amount of volume that you have and convert that into the amount of bags of concrete needed in I think it's cubic yards of concrete. So I did do that, but a lot of the times they are not exact to whatever you're actually estimating. And so I would have to kind of guesstimate in between maybe two different points on the chart that they would have. So one of the things I started using more recently is AI, specifically OpenAI's ChatGPT, or GPT-4, the version that I pay for. And you're taking the chart that is already, the math is done for, because you don't want to necessarily have to rely on GPT-4 to do all of this stuff, which I think it can off the top, but it's better to remind it. So you take a screenshot of that, you type in your estimate problem, the exact numbers that you need estimated, and then you have it take both of those two things into account, and then it just spit out an answer. So that is a way to very quickly and simply automate the process of concrete estimating, really probably to whatever volume you need it for. It could probably take into account rebar without even having to actually show it plans if you gave it the dimensions for the project, because concrete work tends to be flat work and isn't necessarily that complicated to me on the estimating side of things. So you pour the concrete in, going back to the pad example that I was talking about, into the wooden bracings, and then you put plastic over it to help in the curing process. And of course, pull that plastic off once it's cured, pull the forms and discard the forms on an on-site trash can or waste receptacle. And then there you go. So another thing that I wanted to mention that is also concrete related is for warehouses, and that's mostly where I did my takeoffs for this specific company that I'm talking about, where we put down different finishers for the concrete, as well as doing the actual saw cutting and for saw cutting for the control joints, expansion joints, the joints that would go around the steel columns that would be anchored into the ground for the warehouse supports. And a lot of that was just surface area, of course, and lineal footage for all of these materials I'm talking about, and all of these types of interacting basically with the concrete. And it wasn't much past that, really. It really does get complicated whenever you're talking about volumetric measurements and trying to figure out cubic yardage. But that's my 2 cents. Again, I wanted to kind of give this out because 5 years ago, whenever I started estimating, I didn't necessarily see something like this, and just kind of being able to have someone take something into account for me is great. So if you guys want to learn more about estimating, as well as project management and a few other lifestyle tips, you can click on the link in the description, which is a link to my website where I have the ebooks and as well as a few other products, audiobooks on this subject, project management and estimating, if you wanted to kind of get a little bit ahead in your career from where you are right now, if you're just starting, if you're transitioning to the field from a different career path in construction. I've transitioned from the Air Force, doing construction in the Air Force for 4 years, into the estimating and project management field, and that was back in 2019. It's 2024 now. So just wanted to give you guys the information. There you go. Again, my name is Nick.